We are live.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh. You're muted, Dr. Hallis.
Sorry about that. My screen didn't want to move up. Anyhow, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Good evening, everybody. With that, that brings us to item 1.02, roll call. If you would, Mrs. Widener, please.
Mr. Dorr?
Here.
Mrs. Evans-Brockett?
Here.
Dr. Hollis?
Here.
Dr. Kohler?
Here.
Mrs. Lofton?
Here.
Mrs. Mayers?
Here.
Mrs. Roberts?
Here.
Dr. Weston?
Here.
Ms. White?
Here.
All present.
Jane, you're muted.
Sorry, once again, trying to be polite. So anyhow, if you join me, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With that, that brings us to item 1.04, the reading of the PVSD mission statement. The mission of the Perkiomen Valley School District is to cultivate an inclusive community of learners empowered to grow intellectually, socially, and emotionally. And with that, item 1.05, the approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved, Wade.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. Any board members have any questions? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor, please.
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, motion carries. That brings us to item 1.06, the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of
moved, Wade.
February 2021 and March 1st, 2021?
So moved, Wade.
Second.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second. Do any board members have any questions? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, that brings us to item 1.07, which was a special presentation increasing on-site instruction in our schools, and we received that March 1st. And then item 1.08, comments on any topic are taken at this time. Just a reminder, if you do make a comment, please state your name and what municipality you're from, or if you work for the district, what building you're a part of. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up. Okay, with that, then let's move to section 2, the student liaisons report. Ms. McGovern and Mr. Smith, if you would, please.
I didn't have anything to report tonight. Thank you.
The only thing I really had to report tonight was just some logistical questions that I've been talking to several other students about, such as, well, how the cafeteria will be organized, whether all the bathrooms would be unlocked, and how classrooms would be organized.
I don't know if you want to speak to any of that, Dr. Russell, or.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hallis. So, Mr. Smith, what I would recommend is that you reach out to Dr. Moss or your house principal, and we can go over some of that with you. There are plans to organize the cafeteria and eating spaces a little bit differently. And some of the other operational questions you might have are ones that they have firsthand information with and will be happy to discuss with you. We are going to spread people out in the lunchroom. Just one thing I'll note, we are going to spread people out in the lunchroom so that they do maintain that 6 feet of social distancing. In other spaces, learning spaces, individuals may be closer to 4 to 6 feet. if you will.
All right, I thank you for that clarification, Dr. Russell.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item 2.02, the President's Report. I have nothing to report this evening. Last week I read a statement. There's really nothing else to add there. With that, section 2.03 is the Superintendent's Report. And Dr. Russell, if you would, please.
Dr. Hallis, the only thing that I have to add, which is really connected to what I reported on in the special presentation last week, is that we did learn over the weekend of the number of doses our staff are eligible to sign up for and receive this Friday as part of the vaccination clinic that's being organized by the state, run through the IU. And we will be able to vaccinate all instructional, teaching and support staff, as well as additional support staff at the elementary and secondary levels for those that are interested. So this was really exciting news, really good news, and I think a big relief to many of our staff. It feels good. So we have lots of people that have been actually obtaining their vaccination along the way, and the number that we had remaining was not too significant, and we're able to accommodate them this Friday. So really happy for all of us that we can do that and be in a position to feel more secure as we work towards bringing students back for increased time on site. So very thankful to the state and the IU for the organization that's gone into this. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 2.04, the Solicitor's Report. Mr. Subers, do you have anything?
I have no report.
Thank you very much. That brings us to 2.05. I'd invite any board member if they have anything to offer regarding any committees, feel free at this time. I know a lot of stuff hasn't necessarily met. Okay. Not seeing any hands, so I'm assuming there's nothing to report. That brings us to section 3, the consent agenda. Item 3.01 is the approval of the consent agenda. The motion is to approve the consent agenda developed on March 1st, 2021. They're listed. I will let everybody have a chance to have a look and read them. The items that represent the standard routine business of the board are included in the consent agenda. Is there any member that a board member, or is there any item, I'm sorry, that a board member would like to have removed from the consent agenda developed on March 1st, 2021 and placed back into the regular agenda for questions or discussions? And the consent items are listed there. Do I have any comments or questions from board members?
Dr. Hollis, if I could just add, this is Ryan Moran. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I just want to point out that in 7.01, there has been a change to a retirement date. Just wanted to make sure that was done early this morning. Just want to make sure everybody was aware of that.
Okay. Thank you. And I suspect no board member has a concern about that, but I'll, if someone does and wants it removed from the consent agenda, please let me know. Okay. Seeing none, then do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda developed on March 1st, 2021?
So moved.
Second, Rena.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays? Okay, motion passes. That brings us to section 4, education. Dr. Kolar, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hallis. Items 4.01 and 4.02 were both handled on March 1st. Item 4.03 is on the consent agenda. Item 4.04, action was taken on March 1st. So that brings us to 4.05, approval to revise the high school Europe trip. So the motion is to approve the following revised international trip as reviewed and forwarded by building principals and district administration. This is the trip to Europe that had to be rescheduled due to COVID. So I so move.
Second,
Laura.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do any board members have comment or questions at this time? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay, item 4.06 is on the consent agenda. 4.07, 4.08, 4.09, action was taken on March 1st for all of those. 4.10 is a new item. The motion is to approve an increase in elementary health and wellness from 15 to 30 lessons and a decrease in scheduled elementary library from 30 to 15 lessons for students in kindergarten through 5th grade, contingent upon approval of 2 staff positions for health and wellness. And I so move.
Second, Laura.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I see. Go ahead, Dr. Weston. I was going to ask if anybody has any comments or questions. Go ahead.
Yeah, I feel a little uneasy about making the change like this at this time. With I was in the committee meeting, the curriculum committee meeting where we discussed making this change. I didn't get an overwhelming sense of the meeting that there was huge support for making this change at this time. The committee to me seemed kind of mixed. And there were some comments that we had from parents in attendance that make me kind of wonder if we're really getting the content right at this point on the wellness special. There was one parent that commented that, you know, her second grader was coming home and expressing concerns about, you know, counting calories and starting thinking about counting calories, which she didn't really think was appropriate at that age level. And it just really makes me think if we're really getting the wellness curriculum right at this point. And then there was also a survey that went out from the meeting. My conversations with Laurie Smith, it said there were 30 surveys sent out. We only got responses on 10, and 6 of those were in favor of making the change, which is not, I mean, it's a majority of what was returned, but it's not really a mandate in my opinion. I'm still kind of the opinion that we may want to look at this a little bit more, and what, you know, the options that were presented at the meeting were either make this change or to continue the status quo for another year and really think more about how to do this. And I'm just thinking that's my strong preference, and I just wonder how everybody else might feel about that.
Okay, Mrs. Lofton, if you would, please.
So I do wonder if this is a little bit premature. I know that there have been a lot of questions raised about how we're moving forward with this, and I'm not sure that voting on this at this time, if it's contingent upon some action that we're going to take in the future to approve staff positions, actually gives our staff an opportunity to begin implementing it, because it's still a contingent upon something else. So Dr. Russell, I guess my question to you is, you know, if we don't decide for a couple months whether or not we're going to approve the staff positions, does this really give us any advantage to approve this at this time?
I'm gonna defer to Mrs. Smith, and we looked back at a similar approach a few years ago when the board approved the curriculum for 6th grade, but did not approve the implementation contingent upon staffing being available. I think, you know, to speak to some of the concerns and the commentary, administration really believes that this is a solid decision for the elementary level and in the interest of students and our staff, particularly with the implementation of the new reading resource ELA. We recognize that we need to work on the learning targets in the health and wellness curriculum. And there is a good chance that we may have the staff, they're in the budget currently, and we may have them through staff that resign or retire and declining enrollments. As we typically do each year, we have some positions to allocate. So just as a note, administration would find it difficult to move forward completely in the ways that we would need to. You're right, we would sort of be stalled in that, Mrs. Lofton. However, I did want to put a plug in for this particular arrangement for elementary specials. I think administration, the more it's discussed, feels strongly. It is a strong recommendation in the interest of our students. And I don't know if Mrs. Smith, you would like to add anything. We did have a conversation today, she and I, about this in the event there would be questions about the contingency, if you will.
Thank you, Dr. Russell. I would just add that the approval tonight would really allow this current staff in these positions to work on. We recognize, the comments that Dr. Weston shared, that we do need to do some improvement on our current programming. However, the next few months would be a crucial opportunity to do that improvement upon the current 15 days and expand upon it, so that regardless of whether we have the staffing to implement or not, we've had the time to be able to make the changes that need to be made. And I do agree with Dr. Russell that the staffing for these positions is currently within the budget that you'll hear Mr. Weaver speak about, and is, one of our priorities in moving forward. I do think to do justice to health and wellness, and we have the support of our librarians and a plan for what we would like to reimagine in that particular area as well, that this seems like a resolution that the special area teachers, elementary principals, and our administration all support.
So then my other question related to this, then, it sounds to me as though following this, you will come back to us with the actual curriculum for the 30-day programming. So we're not actually approving the curriculum, we're directing you to develop the curriculum for expanding it. Because my other question is, I think the way we originally envisioned the program may need to change as we think about how we're going to address some of the social and emotional needs emerging from the pandemic, and having the students come back to us in a very different environment. And I'm curious if you have given thought to how you're going to address that, or if you've been working with any of our mental health professionals in trying to retool this curriculum to better meet the needs of students given the current reality.
Yes, Mrs. Lofton, this would allow us to begin working on developing a 30-day curriculum. We would absolutely bring that back to you for approval. My goal would be that would come back in June, the latest in July, that you would have the opportunity to view it. And then 30 days later, we typically ask for your approval of them. And you're correct. We recognize that the SEL side of this curriculum is the side that we really want to focus a lot of our attention on for those additional 15 days, and really look back at what we even have on our current curriculum document for the current 15 days. So yes, we would bring back a curriculum to you and ask for your approval at that time. We hope to look at new resources, what might be more engaging, and then this would allow us to bring together those mental health professionals in our staff to give us input into that.
Okay, so we're really gonna now, from this point forward, work to engage the mental health professionals on improving the programming that we're offering at this time.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Lofton. Dr. Kolar, and then Mrs. Roberts, please.
So thank you, Mrs. Smith. You already kind of touched on a couple things I wanted to mention, but I just wanted to say, having been on the curriculum committee and then also the wellness committee, it was discussed in both of those. And just to give you a perspective from that, in the curriculum committee, the librarians were very much in favor of this change, because for me, that was a big concern. I didn't want them to feel like we were taking something away from their library time. And it seemed to me that they were really excited that going down to 15 lessons would free up their time to do more individualized work with teachers and with students. And, it wasn't like we were cutting library time, because I think that was something that parents might have been concerned about, that we're taking away library. And that doesn't, to me, seem to be the case here. So I wanted to make sure that was communicated to the rest of the board, since that was said to us in the committee meeting. And then also in the wellness committee meeting, the two wellness teachers were there, and they addressed the fact that the program hasn't been exactly what we had hoped it might be this year. And I think part of the challenge in that was because it was only 15 lessons that they had to work with. And within those 15 lessons, there are certain health standards they had to meet. So my hope is that adding 15 lessons to that will give us the room to have that social emotional learning that at least I envision for this curriculum. So that's kind of where I'm coming from and wanting to approve it and see, can we really, like Mrs. Lofton said, we're going to be having a lot of challenges after this pandemic with mental health, and maybe giving 15 more lessons to our teachers will really help address some of those things that we're missing this year.
Thank you, Dr. Kolar. Mrs. Roberts, if you would, please.
Yeah, thank you. I actually am kind of excited at the idea of this, especially since the librarians are on board. I would hate to see them, as Dr. Kolar said, I would hate to see them feel like they were being slighted in any way, but I'm glad that they're enthusiastic about it. Now I note that this motion is based upon approval of 2 staff positions for health and wellness. With the staffing issues that we've had thus far this year, which I'm hoping will be out of the picture by the time next year rolls around, do you see that as being a particular impediment, Dr. Russell, or do you think that staffing would be something that we shouldn't have a problem doing? And if we don't fill those positions, what is the alternative to that?
It's an important question for us to talk about. We have staff currently in place in classroom settings that are qualified, highly qualified in the eyes of the state as it's described, to teach the health and wellness curriculum, and they have stepped forward and expressed interest in the past. So in the event that we would see declining enrollments and realize a lower number of classes at particular grade levels across the district, we could actually capitalize on the skill set some individuals already have to teach this curriculum, to deliver this curriculum, with a desire to do so. So this is a pretty popular area, and there are more candidates in this area than, say, biology or chemistry. So right now, at this point, we feel pretty confident that we can get the staffing that we would need, and it may be from right within our own school communities.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Mrs. Mayers, if you would, please.
Thank you. And Mrs. Roberts actually asked, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this 100%. So if we approve this, but then we just see that we don't have room for allocating 2 more teachers for this class, the district is 100% that we can, excuse me, make the curriculum 30 days and we'll just use the teachers that we have. Is that correct? I mean, if so as a board, and look at the finances and decide that we don't have the monies to put forward towards 2 teachers for these classes, what exactly happens?
Go ahead, Mrs. Smith.
I was just going to say, so if we have 2 teachers, which would most likely come from within our current ranks, we would move forward with this motion and we would have the course that would be 30 days. If we do not staff the 2 positions, we would basically be maintaining status quo. We would stay at the 15 days that we currently have, but we would have revamped what those 15 days look like and have brought that curriculum back to you to approve.
Thank
we
you.
did that similarly. Last year, you approved the creation of a 6th grade health course, and we began writing curriculum, and then we ultimately didn't staff it at all. So we did not have the program, but we started some of the work towards it.
Okay, was that the end of your question, Mrs. Mayers? I just want to make sure before I move on to the next person.
Yes, that was it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just didn't want to cut you off and you still wanted to go. Ms. McGovern, if you would, please.
Thank you. I just had a really quick question. I'm sorry, I didn't know where to fit it in. And just on the topic of mental health, do we have any specific plan for like the social emotional well-being of our students coming back in school or in the week of March 22nd because of that adjustment period? I just was wondering if we had anything planned for that.
So if it's all right, Dr. Hallis, I can address that question.
Sure.
We
Go ahead.
Thank you. We did talk about that, Ms. McGovern, at the most recent Health and Wellness Committee meeting, committee meeting, and the transition of our students back to a full day. As we think about it, our 1st grade students have not experienced a full day of school yet. Our teachers at the elementary level anyway are working with each half of their section in different time periods of the day, AM and PM. So principals are working closely with our staff on team building activities, particularly at the elementary level, where students will convene as one group from two, and supporting their efforts in doing that, helping them to think about how we would reestablish classroom routines with a full class. And at the middle level, also considering that more so at the elementary. So yes, that is something that's being considered by our principals as we not only focus on the operational pieces, we also focus on the social and emotional shift for our students as they come back into school for increased on-site instruction.
Okay, thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments from a board member? Okay, seeing none, I had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes. And that brings us to the end of section 4. Thank you, Dr. Kolar. With that, we move to section 5, business. Mr. Dorr, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hallis. Section 5.01 was a finance update last week. 5.02, there are 2 grants and donations, one in the amount of $167,100 for Chromebooks from the PA Department of Education. The other is a $3,000 grant from Giant Foods for hand sanitizing. Okay. 5.03 is a new item. It's a motion to approve the purchase of the itemized technology hardware as presented at an E-rate discount of 40% off the original price for a total of $219,072. Mr. Ganesh, is this an item you want us to reconcile tonight?
Sure, that would be great. Yes, please.
Okay, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
Okay, 5.04, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 are on consent. 5.11, it's a motion to approve the debt incurring resolution as prepared by bond counsel. Actual amount issued will not exceed $7 million. And again, Dr. Russell, do you want this reconciled tonight? Or Mr.
Yes.
Weaver?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Okay, and I so move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
Okay, 5.12, motion to approve an intent to award a guaranteed energy savings contract, ESCO 4.0, to CM3 Building Solutions, Inc., with total project cost exclusive of financing costs not to exceed $6 million, contingent upon finalization of the contract documents by the district administrator and solicitor, securement of the necessary financing for the guaranteed energy savings contract, and provisions of all required bonds, insurances, and guaranteed by CM3. And I so move.
Second.
Second, Wade.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any comments or questions from board members regarding this motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
Okay, 5.13 is also a new item. It's a motion to approve a settlement agreement and release number 405163 in lieu of FAPE as recommended by the solicitor. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, very good. I have a motion and a second. Do I have any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
Okay, section 5.14 will be a budget update for 2021-2022. Mr. Weaver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. Tonight's presentation is our fourth comprehensive presentation. I will not go slide by slide. I know that the board is very well aware of where we are at. I will go straight to slide number 5, which is our changes in revenues from the prior presentation. We are showing another lump impact of our earned income tax, the strength of our earned income tax. Yes, that is another $500,000. That brings us to a budgeted item for 21-22 of $12,500,000, which is just slightly below where we were at for last year. And as you will see in the treasurer's report in section 6, those earned income tax collections continue in strength. So we are recognizing those. Item number 2 there is an adjustment for one half of the FICA and the PSERS associated with an additional expenditure increase, which we'll see a little bit later on. So we are adjusting and adding $512,343 to our overall revenue budget item. Dr. Russell, if you were to move forward, our total revenues now for tonight's presentation, $112,204,513. That is showing a gross year-to-date budget-to-budget comparison of 1.74% for our budget. Dr. Russell, if you were to move to slide 7, a further breakdown. Oh, if you go back one, sorry. Yeah, if you go back one, there's the local revenues, and you can see specifically right in the middle, that 6151 account code, earned income tax. That is now up to the $12,500,000. And we've actually shown growth over the building of this budget, which reflects where we were pre-pandemic. Again, we are very happy with our earned income tax, the effort of that, and we are reflecting that as we move forward for 21-22. Any questions on the revenue side? Okay, thank you. Dr. Russell, if you were to move to slide 16, this is in our expenditures. And if when we get...
You have to help me, Mr. Weaver. I don't see the numbers. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Keep on going. This is in the expenditure side. Couple of slides in. There we go. Thank you. So here are the expenditure adjustments. We are finally getting to the point in time where Mrs. Hurd and I and the administrative team are getting our hands around some areas for us to manipulate and to really stretch and to really get into the detail, nitty-gritty detail. A key component of that is the reduction for the health insurance with the second look. Mr. Moran has kept us up to date on the information received from Bucksmont. We were a little above 3% in our first look. Our second look shows us that we're down to about 2.3, 2.4%. And that, in addition to a little bit of internal auditing, much like we've done year after year in the business office with Mrs. Hurd, we can reduce that initial first look by $400,000. And that's a reduction overall in our expenditures. We are showing an additional amount for our VOTEC increase for 21-22. Again, that's driven by enrollment, and their budget has been approved. So our participation part of that is now $29,358, which brings us to a little bit of over $1.8 million, I believe. Moving forward to the facilities. I'm sorry, Dr. Russell, go back one. Thank you. The facilities rental software, you've seen that. That's a $5,500 increase. The Huddle software that was presented last week, $3,000. We are adding for 3 paraprofessionals associated with some of those special education teacher positions that we've had in since the beginning. As part of our normal course of going through and reconciling different parts, Dr. Boyd, Lori Smith, Dr. Russell, myself, and Mrs. Hurd recognize the fact that our special education teachers oftentimes will get a full-time paraprofessional to be with them. So we are recognizing 3 additional paras. You can see the salaries at $57,960. We have broken out the additional FICA and PSERS associated with those positions at $24,686, and the other benefits, mainly health insurances, of $62,642 for those 3 positions. Those are additions to the expenditures. And then one final adjustment, we've put an estimate in there for the discussion on the municipal lease associated with the vehicles for operations that we are working our way through. Again, those would be for the 2 trucks, the replacement of the safety vehicle, and the 6x4 Gator that we had previously provided in committee. And we'll continue to do that. Those numbers are not ready. Please note that's an estimate. When you condense all of those adjustments, we are reducing the overall expenditures by $166,854 in tonight's presentation. Dr. Russell, if you were to move forward. Couple more slides. Okay, right there. Oh, go back up one. I'm sorry. So here's the overall summary. We now sit at 116,695,161. That is a gross increase of a little over $4 million from last year's or from this current year's budget. And it's a 3.58% increase overall budget year to budget year for expenditures. Dr. Russell, if you were to move forward, here, case in point, are some high-level topics as we talk about various things. I would like to point out that we've.
Mr. Weaver, if
Yes.
I can interrupt you for a second, just because Mr. Dorr put up his hand and it's probably slide specific.
Oh.
So let's take his question as we go along, so you don't have to have Dr.
It is slide specific. Thank you, Dr. Halleck.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Can you go back to the Paris slide for me, Dr. Russell? There it is. So, Mr. Weaver, so there's the ad for the salaries, ad for the FICA and the PSERS, and then ad for the other benefits.
Yes.
Are these all for the same three paras?
Yes.
Can you explain that? I mean, their other benefits exceed their salaries.
So what we do with the other benefits is we do, because they work a full time, 7 hours a day, they are entitled to health insurance. So when we provide the health insurance at their level, that cost to the district is somewhere in the neighborhood of $20,000 for a full family. There is no guarantee that we will hire somebody with that status, but for budgetary purposes, we have to put that in.
Okay. It looked weird that it was higher than the actual salary itself.
Don't forget these positions, they're somewhere around the neighborhood of $19,000 a year.
Yeah.
But yes, so you're absolutely right. The salaries are less than the actual health insurance cost to the district.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to clarify.
You're welcome. Any other questions on expenditures? Seeing none, Dr. Russell, if you were to be so kind and go to that slide. Thank you. Go back one. Thank you. Okay. So just to point out that these are quick hitters. So if we have some questions about those items, you can look at these. There is a bullet point in there where now I have added the 3 paraprofessional positions. Again, ultimately the board says thumbs up or thumbs down, but for budgetary purposes, we have to add those numbers so that we see the whole nugget moving forward. So when you condense the salaries, the benefits, and all in the health insurances and all those kind of stuff, those 3 positions cost the district $145,288. Mrs. Lofton, you have a question.
You're muted, Judy.
Thank you. Yes. I have a question regarding the $700,000 for charter schools and special education needs. And I've been thinking a lot about charter schools. It's my understanding that our charter school costs this year went up significantly because many families, in seeking what would be the best fit for them this year, moved into a charter situation. So we're anticipating that's going to continue to increase next year, or is it that we need to adjust because we're anticipating students who moved to charter to stay in charter?
It's more of the latter.
Okay.
Yes, and that's a total hedge on our part. Again, we're conservative. We'd rather have more in there and then find out as we move through the budgetary process that more of the students are coming back. That's really what we hope for. And then we'll reduce that.
So that's really, I've been thinking about this a lot as we talk about what additional positions that we have. And if we talk about enrollments going down, then we have, that creates certain opportunities. But if our enrollments are going down because students are leaving us to go to charter schools, we're actually wind up spending more money. And so I'm just curious what initiatives the district has in place to try to recruit back the students who left us over the past year, and how we might try to bring some of the students back into the district, and then also how we are, the other part that ties into that winds up being our class sizes. So how are we trying to balance our class sizes while also trying to bring students back?
Yeah, those are great questions, Mrs. Lofton. And I would defer to Dr. Russell and Mrs. Smith on those. I will tell you, though, that you're absolutely right. There is a financial consequence to those actions and those answers.
So, and actually, if you go back, if you look at our enrollment, the enrollment slide, it looks like we were down 252 this year. And I'm wondering, and then we're projecting another drop of 142 next year. So is that accounting for the students who left us for charters, or was that does that account for the students who left us for charters?
Yes, it does. Remember how
Okay.
the 9-year cohort survival method works is that we actually plug in the actual October 1st enrollment, which has those students out. And then
Okay.
that impacts all of those calculations moving forward.
So the calculations moving forward here assume everyone who left stays in a different location.
That's correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
So we could wind up dropping less than the 140 if we're able to successfully recruit students back.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why we came to the board in the very beginning for our cost per student, and we asked that we keep them the same because of that very reason.
Okay. So, and yeah, I'm curious, Dr. Russell, what kind of plans, I know this is something that we've talked about even before the pandemic, about how do we try to recruit back students who are in charters. I'm curious if we have any initiatives underway to try to bring people back into our district.
Yes, we do, Mrs. Lofton. And I'll let Mrs. Smith speak to how she's been working with Mr. Stansemarsh and some of the counselors on really reinventing, redesigning our virtual school, which was PVV until this year. And we implemented VV 2.0 to have our own staff delivering the instruction. But, we're thinking really more deeply about the purpose of a virtual school and how we might market it more effectively to attract students. So I don't know if Mrs. Smith wants to talk a little bit more about just briefly some of the details of that initiative, but yes, there is work being conducted to recruit students back and actually enhance the opportunities for our students that take advantage of it right now, either on a part-time or full-time basis.
Okay.
Dr. Russell, you're correct. We had, prior to COVID, Mr. Stansemarsh and I had really been working on how to market the program. We improved upon our website. We had created some brochures, and we were gathering the list of students who were going to other charter schools, cyber charter, and planning to reach out to them individually or have parent nights and so forth. And that got put on hold, but it did also COVID catapulted kind of our involvement in PV virtual and the course offerings. So we've learned a lot this year. So we hope to take what we've learned and those plans we had before and kind of merge them together to reach out to the families that either participated in our virtual program or an external program to attempt to at least bring them back to our own virtual program.
Okay. And do you have a sense of timeline on when you think you might hear? Because, just as I'm thinking about our budget process and our staffing process, we have to figure out where we are by June. So are those initiatives starting now, or are they going to be continuing in earnest over the summer? Like how?
Yeah, good question. I think that we'll certainly start this spring. I don't know, with families, how quickly they'll be interested in making changes or making decisions upon where they plan to enroll for next year. But we can certainly start this spring and make more of a push for that. If you recall in our monthly enrollment report, and I know next month I'll show you as we roll the numbers over and make our projections for next year, we've included those PV virtual kids are included in our current numbers, projected rolling them over as if they are returning to our brick and mortar classrooms. Now, if they're out in an external cyber charter, they're not included in those rollovers. But we'll start to work on that and hopefully fine tune it a little bit more, but it'll probably take the spring and into the summer for some families to make decisions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, and then Mr. Weaver and Mrs. Mayers looks like she had a question as well.
Yes, please, Mrs. Mayers.
Thank you. I have a question, and it may not be the appropriate time. So I just saw in the next slide that were talking about a line item talking about the possibility of having coaching for some of our students who have autism. And I didn't know, is that something we're going to hear more about? If not this month, next month? That's the first I had seen that.
So we continue to review that possibility with Dr. Boyd.
Mr. Weaver, that is,
Yes.
it's not necessarily an autistic coach. It's meant to be an autistic teacher. If the number of early intervention students materializes through those meetings and we realize the need for an autistic support teacher and Paris to support a new creation of a new room.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, any other questions on expenditures? Okay, moving forward to that slide right there. I just wanted to point out that now we have included the paraprofessional salaries into that number. And Dr. Russell, if you go to the next slide, you can see that the paraprofessional budgetary dollars for benefits are in there as well. So if we move to slide 29, which is basically our equal sign, Dr. Russell. Again, the objects, by object code, the expenditures are listed for the board and the public as well, right there. Thank you. So when you combine on the interactive, the cut and slice of the interactive, total revenues of 112,204,513, compare that to the total expenditures of 116,695,161. We have approved the use of debt service reserve and PSERS reserve to help bring that down. That brings our shortfall as of tonight to 3,523,332. That would drive about a 4.74% tax increase. And in the lower right-hand corner of that slide, you can also see where to get to the 3%, which we've accepted and approved the Act 1 resolution to stay at or below the 3%, we need to utilize a combination of additional revenues of 1,297,000, reductions in expenditures, or uses of available fund balances to help get us within the 3%. You can tell that we are comfortable getting to the 3%, and the work continues to get us lower as we work our way through this budgetary year. Dr. Russell, if you were to move one more slide. I'm sorry, one more slide after that. Thank you. Just as a note, here are unassigned fund balances where the maxes are for the unassigned fund balance and the COVID reserve, which are two key areas that we as a finance committee, as an administration, and a full school board, we worked together towards what is the strategic uses of our available reserves moving forward to help reduce our tax increases moving forward while maintaining our educational program. Dr. Russell, if you were to go to the very last slide, then I believe, as far as our calendar, just want to keep the board up to date. We are on time with our calendar. This was our 4th presentation tonight. We have a presentation in April, which will be the 5th. And then we'll certainly advertise. We have preliminary budget approval coming up on May 10th. Again, as planned, we can adjust if necessary, and final budget approval on June 14th. We are moving lockstep as planned, and we're happy with that and very positive. Any questions on the budget? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weaver. That ends my section, Dr. Hallis.
Thank you, Mr. Doerr. That brings us to section 6, payment of bills. Dr. Weston, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hallis. Item 6.01, the ratification of bills and payroll and the authorization of payments. Recommended action on this item is a motion to ratify the payment of bills and payroll as per the list submitted for the period ending February 28th, 2021, and to authorize the payment of bills on the check and voucher register submitted for March, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second, and I see Mrs. Evans-Brockett has a question, if you would, please.
I just wanted to let you know I need to abstain from voting on this because I received reimbursement for Power Packs expenditures.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have any nays? Okay, motion passes.
Very good. Item 6.02, the approval of the treasurer's report and financial statements. The recommended action on this item is a motion to approve the treasurer's report and financial statements, including the summary of cash and investment accounts as prepared by the administration for the period ending February 28th, 2021, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from board member? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Very good, motion passes. Thank you, Dr. Weston. That brings us to section 7, professional personnel. Ms. White, if you would, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hallis. Section 7, professional personnel, 7.01, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all on consent. 7.06, there was an action taken on March 1st for the approval of professional appointments. 7.07 is also on consent. 7.808 is a new item. It's approval of leaves of absence. I motion to approve the leaves of absences as leaves of absence as listed. Sorry.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yays? Okay, motion passes.
7.09 is a motion to ratify the provisional employment of the long-term substitute and extended daily substitute personnel as listed, pending fulfillment of all statutory requirements, and I so move.
Second, Wade.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
7.10 is a new item to ratify the appointments of 2020-2021 spring coaches as listed, including salary plus additional associated payroll and benefit costs, pending completion of all necessary documentation, and I so move.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion passes.
And that ends my section.
Thank you very much, Ms. White. That brings us to section 8, support personnel. Mrs. Roberts, if you would, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hallis. 8.01, 8.02, 8.03, 8.04 are all on consent. 8.05 is a new item, and that item is to accept the resignations and retirements as listed. And I so move.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do I have any questions or comments from board members? Sorry, my brain skipped a beat there. Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, motion passes.
8.06 is also a new item, and the motion is to ratify, approve the provisional employment of the support personnel as listed, pending fulfillment of all statutory requirements, and I so move.
Second, Wade.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nays? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes, and Mrs. Evans-Brockett has her hand up. If you would, please, Mrs. Evans-Brockett.
Yes, I actually wanted to make a motion from the floor. I was part of the PV contingent that visited Springford, an elementary school, their 5th, 6th, and 7th grade center in their high school on Thursday to learn more about how they've been able to be successful with bringing students back. And one of the noted things was the number of building substitute staff that they had. So in a debrief today with some administration and others who were there, we discussed how that would be helpful. So I'd like to make a motion to allow administration to hire support staff as needed to support the return of full in-person schooling up to not to exceed $500,000 from our COVID fund.
Second.
Jean, you're muted.
My apologies, sorry. Sorry, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments from board members? Oh, I see Mrs.
I'm
Maris.
trying to read them. There.
Mrs. Maris, if you would, and then Mrs. Lofton, and then Dr. Kolar.
I guess I don't understand. I'm sorry, I'm ignorant in this. I'm not exactly sure how that would differ. So you're saying you just want them to be able to use it as needed instead of waiting till the next board meeting? Is that the purpose of this motion?
Yes, because school will be starting prior to the next board meeting, and for them to have designated substitute staff for the building. So if we have teachers that need to go out on quarantine or are absent that day, that we have substitute staff to fill that, because it's so hard to get substitutes on a day-to-day basis. That was something that Springford had several substitute staff for each of their buildings, and that made a huge difference in being able to continue to have their students in person.
Where do they get the substitute staff from? I mean, how is this?
They secured their substitutes, if I may, Mrs. Evans-Brockett, from the substitute teaching service that we also use. So there are times in the past where we are allocated super subs, they're called, and a certain number of substitutes comes to the district, reports to the district on a consistent basis. And Springford has actually arranged to have quite a few in their buildings. And it really comes in handy and helps out. And our principals are not only concerned with supporting teachers who may be out, absences tend to be higher in the spring anyway. It will help during lunch and recess and some of those other operational times where having some additional hands on staff will be extremely helpful.
Thank you.
Hey, Mrs. Lofton, if you would, please.
So, thank you. I'd like to follow on to Mrs. Maris's question then. So if I'm understanding this motion correctly, we're not actually creating new staff positions. We're not bringing on extended daily subs or long-term subs, in essence, to act as floaters for the spring, but this is something that we're contracting with STS, or how? I'm not quite certain how exactly this works. And how much everybody, are they being paid our standard sub rates? Is there something different? How are these individuals going to be classified?
So I would offer, it could potentially be a little bit of both. STS, if we can secure the subs on a regular basis, we'll do that. However, I would defer to Mr. Subers and wonder whether or not we could employ support staff on a part-time basis in a temporary manner. So in other words, hold them through the end of the school year without being committed to them as part of the bargaining unit. If that's permissible, that's also an option for us. So actually both paths would be considered and are being considered currently.
I think if the board action identified this as a temporary position, namely through the end of the current school year, that we could do that. But I would request that the action item be amended to reflect that.
Mr. Subers, based on the language in the agreement, must they be part-time under those circumstances?
I'd have to tell you what, I'd have to look at the agreement. I think that one way of doing this is to take the action subject to solicitor approval.
Okay. So if the board would consider that, administration certainly would welcome the opportunity to employ some additional support staff between now and the end of the school year for the purposes that we just mentioned a few minutes ago. And we would pursue opportunities to get those support staff through employing them, again, per the agreement, so that we wouldn't be obligated to them permanently, and through STS.
Do you have a follow-up question, Mrs. Lofton, or?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
With my hand down.
Dr. Kolar and then Dr. Weston, please.
Thank you. I just had a question about the amount. I believe it was 500,000, and wondered how many employees that would afford us within that budget, and just wanted to, it was mentioned it would come from COVID relief, and I wanted to make sure we had that balance in that account to do that.
I can offer up that in the actual budget presentation that we just went through, I blew by it pretty fast. We have an estimated balance in our COVID reserve of about 2.8 million, almost $2.9 million. So the question of balance of funds should not be an issue with that particular question.
And Dr. Kolar, to your question regarding quantity or how many, right now, if we considered full-time, that would cover 10 to 12 additional full-time. However, administration is certainly open to considering part-time based upon the interest on the part of individuals who may want to actually be employed in this way. So it'd be about 10 to 12 across all 7 schools.
Okay, thank you.
If you would, Dr. Weston, please.
Actually, the previous board members asked all the questions I was going to ask, and they have been addressed. So I am going to lower my hand.
Thank you, sir. Any other board members have questions or comments? Okay, with that, I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have any nays? Okay, motion passes.
Dr. House, don't we have to reread the motion with the adjustments?
I think Mr. Schubers.
Yeah,
Let's do that again
should
then,
be
right?
the amended motion.
Okay, so do you want to
And I'm
kindly give us the language?
Sure. I just want to make sure that Ms. Brockett and the person who seconded are in agreement. The motion would be to authorize the district administration to retain substitute support staff as needed for the remainder of the current school year with a total expenditure not to exceed $500,000, subject to solicitor approval.
That's exactly how I would have said it.
Thank you.
I agree to it the second.
Okay, thanks for catching that, Mr. Doerr. Any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have any nays? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you very much.
So with that, that ends Section 8 personnel support or support personnel. Mrs. Roberts, thank you very much. Brings us to Section 9, governance, Mrs. Mayers. And if you would, Mrs. Mayers, just permit me 30 seconds. I just want to, as some have probably seen, the last motion here is, I'm sorry, a little further down is item 9.06 is my resignation as president. I just want to thank the board members for giving me the opportunity to serve. I unfortunately was given a bunch of new responsibilities at work, and there's no way I can fulfill the duties of the presidency. And if I'm not going to be able to do it right, then I don't feel I should do it. Hence the reason why I'm stepping down or resigning. So with that, if you would, Mrs. Mayers, please.
Thank you. Governance 9.01, first reading on policies. The following policies are presented for a first reading. 113.3, 903. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, see none. 9.02, the motion is to hold a second reading and adopt the following policies. 006, 006.2, 103, 218.3, 252, 620, 906, 910, and 916. And I so move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any questions or comments from board members? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have any nays? Okay, with that, the motion passes.
Okay, 9.03 was removed. 9.04 is on consent. 9.05 action was taken March 1st. 9.06 is a approval of resignation of the board president. And I so move.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Dr. Weston, please.
You're on mute, Wade.
Sorry about that. It's the first, I think that's the first time I've done that. I just want to congratulate Dr. Hallis on the new program that he's involved with at work. It sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And, you know, we will leadership as our president. But we are glad you're still with us on the board.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, the motion passes.
And then section 9.07. It looks like Mrs. Evans Brockett, I think, is going to run this section. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Maris. At this time, I will accept nominations for board president to serve for the term of 1 year.
And just for I'm sorry, just for clarification, it's the remainder of the current term.
Right, till
Being vacated.
reorganization December next year. Thank you. Mrs. Lofton?
I'd like to nominate Dr. Weston.
Okay, thank you. Mrs. Roberts?
I'd like to nominate Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Thank you. Are there any other nominations for the position of board president? Seeing none, nominations for board president are closed. The names of Dr. Weston and Mrs. Evans Brockett have been properly nominated. Mrs. Widener, will you do a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mrs. Lofton,
Dr. Weston.
Mrs. Mares,
Dr. Weston.
Mrs. Roberts,
Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Dr. Weston,
Dr. Weston, myself.
Ms. White,
Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Mr. Dorr,
Dr. Weston.
Mrs. Evans Brockett,
Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Dr. Hallis,
Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Dr. Kolar.
Mrs. Evans Brockett.
Mrs. Evans Brockett has 5 votes.
That's controlling, and we'll now need Ms. Evans Brockett to fill the vacancy in vice president, correct?
Yes. So I will accept nominations for board vice president to serve until December of this year.
I nominate Dr. Kolar.
Any other nominations? Mrs. Mares?
I nominate Dr. Weston.
Are there any other nominations for the position of board vice president? Seeing none, nominations for board vice president are closed. The names of Dr. Kolar and Dr. Weston have been properly nominated. Ms. Widener, if you would take a roll call vote.
Sorry, Mrs. Mares,
Dr. Weston.
Roberts,
Ms. Widener, you broke up there. Could you repeat that name, please?
and Mrs. Roberts,
Thank you.
Dr. Kolar.
Dr. Weston,
Dr. Weston,
Ms. White,
Dr. Kolar.
Mr. Dorr,
Dr. Weston,
Mrs. Evans Brockett,
Dr. Kolar,
Dr. Hollis,
Dr. Kolar,
Dr. Kolar,
Myself, Dr. Kolar.
Mrs. Lofton,
Dr. Weston.
Dr. Kolar has 5 votes.
thank you. So moving on to item 9.08, can I have a motion to authorize the board officers to sign checks and continue to use the present signature plate until a new one can be made?
Second,
Or there needs to be a motion.
so
I
moved.
need a, so moved. And then Mrs. Roberts, you're seconding? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?
aye,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And that brings us on to closing items. At this time, comments from the audience will be accepted. Same procedures as at the beginning. Please, if you'd like to make a comment, raise your hand, state your name and your municipality, and you will have a 3-minute time period. Mr. Ganesh, if you could
Yeah, Mr.
unmute. Thank you.
Sure, Mr. Gale.
Yes, hi, this is Jarrett Gale, Lower Frederick Township. Calling in, wanted to make sure we honor Gene on his great term as president here. We can look back on the successes he had. Started off with messing up the Pledge of Allegiance to start off in his very first meeting. That was a good way to start it off there. And then we ended up in a situation where Gene's now being looked into for obtaining private details about my own child in some sort of way and using power and abuse of authority that he shouldn't be doing. I wonder if that has anything to do with his resignation here. Kind of suspicious on that one there. So kudos to you, Gene. You had a heck of a term there. I would say the other thing that we probably successfully accomplished underneath you is that you successfully silenced speech. You have limited the amount of time that the public can now comment, which I think is awesome. It's a good legacy to put in. I'd be very proud if I were you. I know that you championed work about you, about the revolution and different things. And you were so proud of some family member of yours that served in the military and yada, yada, yada the other day. But you've now championed the removal of speech, which I think is awesome. So you should be very proud of that, Gene. And it's more like a communist regime. And I expect it to fully continue under the next regime here that was just installed haphazardly in here. So let's get back to the kids getting in school. Congratulations. We're not leading, we're following the rest of the community, but hey, we're making some changes. We're K-8. That's great. That's awesome. Let's get the high schoolers back in there. We're not going to sit back on our laurels and rest. I know that the best thing this board is good at doing is patting themselves in the back. They're excellent at that. So we can all do that. We'll give you a round of applause, but it's time to move forward now. Let's get the high schoolers back in. If you thought we're going to stop, we're not. It's not going to let up until the high schoolers are back, until every kid has the ability to get the education that they deserve and they have earned the right to have by being in this community here that we pay our taxes to. So on that, I'm going to wrap it up. Again, kudos to Eugene. You silenced more speech than Stalin. Awesome. The similarities don't end like there. It's kind of ironic. Have a great evening.
Are there any other comments from the public at this point? Mr. Ganesh, can you unmute the next participant?
This is Godchild.
Hello, this is Heather Gottschall from Trapboro. I submitted a comment today and I see that it did not, I guess, get approved, which is probably part of what you guys changed tonight in the meeting with the whole freedom of speech and us not being able to voice questions or concerns. Also, you never answer anything when we do ask a question, so I'm not really sure sometimes what the point is. Anyway, here is what I wrote that you didn't post. Good evening. In the agenda, I see there's being a change of position to the school board president. No one votes on this. The taxpayers, the parents, the employees of the district have no say in this. Just one more thing that's being taken away from our rights. Why is freedom of speech no longer allowed? My post submitted to a parent group was not approved today, and all that showed was tonight's agenda with the president's replacement. So why isn't this allowed? Why can't the public agenda to a meeting be posted for all to see? Not everyone has time to look at the agendas. Amy Sachs voiced her viewpoints on her private page and got canned. Simple civil rights being stripped away from all. You're hiding things, you're being sneaky, you're letting down the whole community. More proof of how corrupt the school board and the system is.
Okay, looks like that comment finished. Ms. Widener, just to clarify, we do have any submitted comments posted up under in the top of the agenda, correct?
That is correct. In item 1.08, they're posted.
Okay, so that's where you can find anyone that submits a comment prior to a board meeting for future reference. Are there any other comments from the audience at this time? Seeing none. That moves us on to section 10.02. Comments from board members are accepted at this time. Are there any comments from board members? Mr. Roberts.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Dr. Hallis for his service as president to the school board. I'm really appreciative of everything that has been done under his tutelage, and we made a great deal of progress while he was president, and I know Mrs. Evans-Brockett, that progress will continue. So congratulations to you, and thank you, Dr. Hallis.
Thank you, Mrs. Roberts. Mrs. Mayers.
Thank you. I would like to know, and maybe it needs to be on the agenda. I'm actually not sure how we move forward with this conversation, but I would like to know when we can discuss and decide if we're going to meet in person, as we are, everybody is meeting in person. Our teachers are in, our students will be in, and I would just like to have that question discussed, and thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayers. That was definitely something that I plan to send an email out to board members this week. Dr. Hallis.
Thank you, Ms. Evans-Brockett. I just want to correct a couple things. Since I've had to basically see my character get destroyed repeatedly. It was my father who served and suffered 90% disability for the rest of his life. He basically went through 3-year cycles of surgery from the day he was wounded in Vietnam till the day he died just a couple years ago. So I find the constant denigration by Mr. Gale to frankly be puerile, ridiculous. And by the way, my grandparents escaped communism and then fought the Nazis. My father was born in a Benedictine monastery during World War II as my grandfather skied the Alps against the partisans. So I'm really tired of these spurious accusations that have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with me. The change in public comment was one that is standard for almost every single district in the county. There's been no suppression of free speech. And Mr. Gale, bring this mysterious investigation, please. Please, there's no investigation. This is the same man who declared that we were acting as if it was crystal meth, which was an offensive comment. And he's made many others. And frankly, it does nothing to aid the civility of this district as we actually try to solve problems. So, everybody's welcome to make a public comment, but let's actually make sure they're based in fact. That's all. Facts matter. And when these sorts of things are said, whether it's about me or anybody else in this community, it really does nothing to help the matter. And that's it. I've remained silent on much of this for months on end. And I just want to set the record straight, considering the service of my father to this country, and what my grandparents actually went through to get him and his siblings here. That's it.
Any other board comments at this point?
Mrs. Evans Brockett, if I may, I would also thank you. I would also like to echo the thanks to Dr. Hallis. Dr. Hallis, I have really appreciated, for the short time that we have worked together closely in these roles, I've appreciated your leadership, so thank you. And to you, Mrs. Evans Brockett, and to Dr. Kolar, congratulations. And I look forward to our working relationships moving forward, so thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just end it by also thanking Dr. Hallis and saying that I'm excited to have the opportunity to lead. It certainly does not escape my notice that it was a divided vote tonight, but I hope that I can show that I'm a leader for the entire board and that I can help to unify us as we move forward. And I'm open to any comments or suggestions from any board members. With that, we will adjourn for this evening. There was no executive session tonight. And thanks everyone for coming.
Good night, everybody.